Let's get cracking. Are you setting a timer? This is gonna go forever.
All right, welcome back everybody to We're Nerds and You Gotta Deal with It. My name is Miranda. I'm one of the co-hosts here, and my co-host joining me, Cassidy. Say hi, Cassidy. All right. So today we are actually talking about the world of bending. We're going to be talking about bending from Avatar the Last Airbender. We're going to start this off where we got our roots from, which is Avatar the Last Airbender. We hopped on a very interesting topic about bending the other night, so we decided to save it, and we're just going to make it the first episode, and we're just going to go on because the conversation was getting heated, Cassidy. I will admit. So we'll
It
enjoy.
definitely got very philosophical and very like what ify. So I'm really curious to like see what everyone else has to say about it because like every time I bring it up to people, everyone has different opinions. So
Yeah, it's interesting to get everybody else's opinion. So I think to start off, it's just what is bending in general? Like what what is it? I just think it's just basic. It's just the manipulation of all of the different elements. So that it. Cool. You're all caught
but
up.
yeah, yeah, we got this.
You're ready to rock the show. But no, I think one of the topics that we were kind of getting into was like uniqueness of each style. I think one of the philosophical things that I enjoy is how each style was kind of um, based upon a real world fighting style. Whereas like the waterbending was based off Tai Chi. And what is it? I think we got Earth is from Hungar, which is a form of Chinese. It's a Chinese fighting style. And then of course, for your firebending, it's like a Shaolin, Northern Shaolin Kung Fu type style, which is kind of interesting to know. And then I know we have an interesting story from learning the elements ourselves, don't we?
You're just a little.
Just a little. So
Well, I think so. When we get into bending, right? Like, I think one of the really interesting things that they did with bending, and I know I don't remember if I like read this somewhere or heard it somewhere, or like we were at a convention with Sifu Kisu, but I remember like hearing them talk about how each bending style kind of went with like how the element itself was, right? So like water bending, they wanted something that was more fluid and flowy, kind of like how water kind of like with like the pushing and the pulling of like the waves and things like that, and like with earthbending, how everything's very grounded, right? Like all of like the moves are very like solid stance, very solid base. I think that's probably one of like the most interesting things for me, like when I like learned more about like how they kind of like when they went with like the bending styles, like how I think Sifukisu went in like giving them ideas of like which like style that they were gonna like base it off of.
that's pretty neat. Yeah. So for the folks listening at home, is that Cassidy and I were at a convention one time, and we had the honor and privilege of getting to meet and hang out with Sifu Kisu, which is the martial arts guy that kind of did all of the martial arts for Avatar: The Last Airbender. So that was pretty neat, and I'd forgotten a lot of that from what he told us.
Yeah, I think I mean, it really stuck with me just because, like, I think the amount of, I think, thought process that went into all of the things that was in Avatar: The Last Airbender, like all of like the background, right? So like when he went in with trying to figure out which bending styles to go for which, you know, Tai Chi versus like the Hungar, like, he went in with like this idea of like he knows these different styles and went for something that matched that element. I think that's just kind of like I would never have thought about that. Like I would never have like thought that that was like a thought process behind like going into it. And I know that he was very active in like the entire series, making sure that it was all like still very, close to that source material.
I yeah, I will say it's probably one of the most memorable convention experiences that we've had, which will be in later episodes and whatnot. Well,
Somewhere I still have a fan that was signed by him.
really, that's all.
I should have found it because I knew we were going to be talking about this. But I have a fan because that convention I didn't have anything to like have them sign, so I had all of the people that were there sign the fan.
Mm. Well, I'm pretty sure there's going to be more uh, ATLA and Legend of Korra episodes. So We have,
Oh,
we have
100%.
we have plenty of time to show off all of our little knickknacks and doodads. So, but
All of
also
our fun things.
yes, okay. So, but like so laying out the groundwork of bending and the different styles, then like came a twister within the show was then the subgroups of bending. I think the first one we were introduced to was blood bending. So I think that was the first. Was that the first one or was it lightning? I want to say it was blood. It was
Was bloodbending really before uh metal?
I.
Because I know they were both in the same season, which means lightning would have been the first thing that we would have been introduced to,
Right.
because like we've known for quite a while that like, because that, I mean, like there's also like the differences between like the blue fire versus the red fire, but like we've always known that like you can redirect lightning, because that was kind of like one of the things with Iroh teaching Zuko how to do these
Yeah. I
things.
think I think the most prevalent. I'm sitting here wearing my Earth Kingdom baseball jersey, so I'm like, nah, metal bending, nah. but like I cough at me, just
Eh.
blonde haired and well, not fully blind, but getting there. Um,
You know, you could be probably considered legally blind, maybe.
Listen, I just turned 30. I'm not too far behind, probably. No, but yeah. So I mean, regardless of which one came first, I think it's very interesting that you go that extra step into the world of bending and the fact that you have so your waterbenders can blood bend, your metal bender or your earthbenders can metal bend and lava bend that we discovered in Legend of Korra, which I thought was pretty cool. There's two different types, and then of course your fire bending with your lightning redirection. Um, Air, I think we just discussed like was it oxygen?
So my question was, what does air bend, right? So is air bending any single gaseous element, or are we only talking oxygen, right? Because like we never really get to see or delve into any other like science part of like air bending, because it's just like air is all around. You're just bending the air that exists inside the like
You bending
universe.
you bending the air that exists
Shut up! Are you making fun of the way I chuck?
is great.
Um, but like, so like that's my question, right? Is like we have these subgroups. We have subgroups for water. We have subgroups for earth. We have subgroups for fire. What would the subgroup for air be, right?
Yeah,
Like what constitutes as air?
because I know in Legend of Korra, Zahir was able to actually take the breath out of somebody and basically suffocate them that way. Not just like, hey, I'm just gonna form like this air bubble around you where you suffocate down. He just straight up went in and was like, okay, bye, and then, like took it. But then it also begs like the scientific question. Like, say, you're around like different types of gas, like a sulfur gas or like a chlorine gas, or just like any other type of gaseous substance.
Carbon
Are you
dioxide.
so yeah, like are you able to bend that as well?
Well, okay, so getting really creepy on this, right? Like, can you bend the carbon dioxide that's coming out of someone's mouth into just a bubble around them, so all they're doing is breathing in carbon dioxide, right? Like, are we bending oxygen or are we bending carbon dioxide? And then that just delves into another question that I've had about the elements. And we're just manipulating every single element, right? You're manipulating the air, you're manipulating the water, you're manipulating the earth, but
Except
you're not
for
manipulating the fire.
this is where we had that conversation. This is where we stopped that conversation the other day because we knew it was going to get to a really good point. So explain that point one more time.
Okay, so technically, fire in my mind, right? The way that I produced the question when we first started talking about this, fire is the only element that you create the element that you are bending, right? So, firebenders, they don't have to have a lit candle to then take the fire and do something with it. They can just shoot fire out of their fingertips. They can heat things up with their hands, as we have seen Iroh do, right? And like technically we know that like waterbenders can make things cold because they can turn water into ice and vice like turn it back into water. But like they're not creating the water. They can't just like magic water out of nowhere, because we know this for a fact, because when they had that episode where Katara and Toph were stuck in a wooden cell because there's a waterbender and an earthbender and they can't bend wood, like they had to create sweat to then have Katara be able to bend it. They couldn't just be like, bam, water, right?
Yeah.
And so then that begs the question for, like, we know the earth, you can't just create rocks, right? But with air, are you able to create air? Like, are we creating oxygen when we're bending oxygen here? I say we as if like I have the ability to bend. But right, so
Girl,
like
girl,
my
you a
question,
waterbender.
we know this, okay? But so my question was that I like was like, okay, so like firebenders can create their element. They're the only ones that can create their
Mhm.
element. There's no way around it, right? Like even if they were, if you transferred into saying they're heat benders, right? Because we know that they manipulate heat because they can heat up tea without having like Iroh was like heat his hands to like heat the tea, and then when Zuko was in the cold chamber, like he was able to keep himself warm by just breathing out hot air, right? So we know that they can create heat. They can like, so like obviously if they create enough heat, it creates fire. My question is, can airbenders create air, and what kind of air are they creating? Because this goes back to the question of what air are we bending?
See, now, like, it's a very good question. Like, and I don't have the smarts to even begin to try to form some sort of answer for it. So if you guys out there are listening, if you're able to comment on anything, if you're watching this on the YouTubies, it if you're some kind of scientist or you have a theory of your own, let us know down below. Or I don't know how it works on podcasts, but but yeah.
Well, okay, so here's the question that goes with the airbending that will at least help you decide, right? Like which side you land on. I think that they're just manipulating the air. I don't think they were creating air, right? But say you put an airbender in a airtight box, right? So eventually if you put a human being in an airtight box, they will run out of oxygen to breathe. Can an airbender create oxygen within that box, or are they only bending, right? So like here's the question, right? If we go with they only bend oxygen, they don't bend any other form of air, would they run out of being able to bend things, because then all that's left in the box is carbon dioxide and you just end up breathing it in and you die?
Yeah.
Or are they able to just create oxygen with the ability to just create their element,
You
right? That's the question.
See, now that you pointed out that way, I think what my answer to the theory would be is um, that they just can manipulate like the gases around them. So, say they're in a box that would eventually run out of oxygen. They are not able to manipulate the molecular structure of a gas. Not at least not to my knowledge. So then I would think that they would run out of air. You know,
But you think that they could bend that carbon dioxide, though, right? It's
I
like you don't think,
I
because I'm not saying that they're manipulating the
yeah,
I'm saying like could they create more, right? Like could they also like, so here's the other idea, right? So if you can bend air, what goes in its place when you've bent it, right? So
yeah.
like if you were in an airtight box, how would an airbender get out of that? Because if you only have enough air to bend that is in that box, what happens to the rest of the space that is in that box, right? You've taken all of the gas or air or oxygen, whatever you've decided the airbenders can do, condense it into a ball. Can you even condense it into a ball? Because there's nothing else to take its place.
I I think it would then start that it would then begin to create a vacuum. Maybe.
So
Like
you create a black hole. Like,
pretty much it's like this
so now we know how black holes are created. Airbenders,
airbenders created.
airbenders in airtight containers created black holes.
So no, going back to the thing is I think that I do believe that they can manipulate like different types of gaseous, elements like like a carbon dioxide or a sulfur or whatever. Um, but I do not believe that they can change the molecular structure. And then if they were to just they were in that box and they just took all of it out or they bent all of it out, I think it would then somewhat begin to create a vacuum. That's my theory. Again, I'm not I'm not a scientist, so
My thing, right, is I would like airbenders to be able to create their element only because it bothers me that firebenders are the only benders that can create their element. This would give me an even balance, and I would be okay with this, right? But at that time, right, so if airbenders are creating their element, in my mind they'd only be able to bend oxygen, right? So like I don't think that they would be able to create whatever gas they want, right? I think that they're only creating oxygen at that point,
yeah.
not because like with air it is a really interesting idea of like it's kind of like an infinite but not really infinite resource
And I just have
because
and continue.
like I guess like I said in my mind, like right, if you're in that airtight box, what happens when you bend the air? Like can you even bend the air because there's nowhere else for other things to go? That's why you were saying you create a vacuum, right? Because like it's an infinite yet finite resource, because like when you're airbending out in the open, you have all this air that can get displaced and replaced into those areas that you have taken the air from. Because obviously when Aang's making a little bubble of air to like float around on, he has taken air and condensed it and is moving it in like a certain area that it was not already moved in, but like all this other air that exists to take its place.
Yeah.
Because the same as like water bending, you move the water and there's air in its place.
Yeah. So then also begs another question. So you know how waterbenders can take water out of plants. Can
Mm-hmm.
airbenders take the oxygen that the plants give off and like suck the life out of a plant that way, the same as waterbenders do with
I don't
moisture?
think so, right? So I think because of the way the molecular structure of a plant is, like they could like technically like pull the rest of that oxygen, but it wouldn't kill the plant because the plant is not made of oxygen. The plant is just creating oxygen. So like whereas like with like water benders, the plant has water inside it, like the same way that humans have water inside their body. They need that to function because if they don't have water, they dry out, they become like this like dry husk of a thing, right? Because we've all forgotten to water plants in our lives, I'm sure, and they have become brown and crispy and yeah. So like we know that like plants need water to survive because they are partially water. I'm sure you could look up the actual like how much of plants are water, but like I don't think that you could take the air out of a plant because like the plant doesn't have air like the way that humans have air.
Hmm. Yeah. So that, I mean, they're all very, very good philosophical questions that, here and that, what is it? How, like, how long ago was it? 20,
Korra was like more than 9 years ago
Korra, I
because
think that
that's
was
when our last
8 years ago.
episode was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then,
because yeah, I was watching Avatar: Last Airbender in high school.
yeah, so at least 15 years ago. I mean, I feel so dumb not knowing the
God,
exact
I
date, but it's been a long
look. We can look it up, but we're the like most unprepared podcast you'll ever listen to or watch. Okay,
time.
that's what makes this entertaining.
Exactly. But if you think when we first started watching Avatar the Last Airbender, all these years later, we're now like, I'm 30, you're almost 30, and it's like we now have philosophical questions. And that's the lovely thing about it, is that people are still watching this. It is still growing. Like it's one of those like magical type of shows that it just kept going. Like, and I don't see any end in sight for it. Like, I
I mean,
think it's fantastic.
they, if I'm not mistaken, I was reading a thing because like the creators were on a podcast that I probably should start listening to, the Avatar: Last Airbender podcast, obviously. Um, but they had like literally were mentioning like with the Avatar studios and stuff, like they have like almost like another like 20 years planned of things that they want to do, right? Like it's obviously they're not coming out with things within the next year because like you've got to animate things, you've got to like have the storyboarding and all of that. But like they were saying, like they've got a lot that they have planned because like there is so much stuff that goes into that like world building that they've already put down, right? So it's like we're having these discussions, right? But
Mhm.
like we're probably not the only ones having these discussions about like what are airbenders actually bending? Like can they create air? Firebenders create fire. Like so it's like it makes me wonder if they'll ever like if they'll address it at some point because I have questions that need answering.
Listen, Brian and Daniel, we have questions and they need to be answered.
Yeah, I need these questions answered because I'm actually well, and it's like not even that like I need it answered because like there's like a plot hole in the story, right? Like I need these answered because I'm really curious like if benders were real, right? If we were to walk outside right now or if I were to be like a waterbender, you know, like I'm very curious how like that would work in real life.
Hmm.
Speaking of waterbenders, though, the one thing that I just realized that semi doesn't make sense is the healing properties of waterbenders. Look, look, I know every single like show that is magical of some sort has to have a healer, but like, why does water heal your wounds? I mean, we can make a joke that like, you know, hydrate, you'll save
Hydrate,
yourself.
hydrate before you dehydrate.
Right? But it's like why is it water, right? Why is water that automatic are you trying to refocus your camera? There you go.
Focus on. Continue.
So why was water chosen to be that, right? Like why not air? We all know why not fire. But like why not earth, right? Cuz earth technically if you think about in the earth realm, this is the other philosophical question that got brought up, right? Is what do you consider earth? Are we only bending the rocks, or do you consider the plants and the trees and shit that are part of the earth, earth? Because if you do, then they should be the healers. I'm just saying right now.
Because more plants have more medicinal properties than water. I guess in the spirituality of it, I guess you could say, it was easier to go that route. I know in some spiritual cultures, it's like, hey, what it's like certain waters have like minerals and whatnot in it. I guess where water benders would come from. That would help because you notice it's not all water. That Katara would only carry around like a small vial of it. She did. It's not like she could just grab water from anywhere. It was
Right, but I mean, like
healing.
that begs the question, though, right? Is like that why did they choose water? Because like there could have been a specific Earth thing that they could bend. Because we also know that Earth is not just like dirt, right? Because there's space rock that was like being able to be bent by Toph. So like we know that it's not just the dirt that's outside. Like what sediment all is included in earth bending,
Hmm.
right? Because I mean we know that you can bend like metal because they're like basically like iron because there is like traces of dirt or like earth in it. But what is that earth?
Yeah,
What is like what stops like where does the earth stop and like the like lack of earth begin
yeah,
because we know that wood is not earth.
yeah. Like you had gone back. It's like you can't bend wood, and if you can't bend wood, I would only assume then that you could not bend plants because a tree is a type of plant. So
Right.
I think when it comes to earth bending, I think it would be, the mud, the rocks, the boulders, the boulder, then
A boulder.
I can't do an earth bending segment without saying and then of course your dirt and your sediment. So I think with earth bending, I think in my mind it would be just like your dirt, your rocks, your boulders, and then of course uh your various chemicals like that. Chemicals, what? I don't know. But
Sediment.
that's what I was looking for. Listen, it's
Just like edits in instead of saying chemicals, you just edit in sediment. Very obvious, like it's obvious you didn't say sediment, but like very obviously edited in.
but my butt's too lazy to do anything, so I'm just uploading raw stuff.
Right? Like I was like, I feel like we're gonna hit a point where I'm like, you're gonna edit that out, right? And it's just gonna be in there.
This is what you get. But okay, so going back and then like earth bending and metal bending, we're I'm gonna kind of segue into a little bit. One thing that I have a curious question about is that can earthbenders kind of technically be bloodbenders because I did some research on this topic. I spent a lot of time at work standing around doing absolutely nothing, thinking about it and researching it. Was it? Yes, 90% of the blood in our body is made up of water. But however, there are 3 to 4 grams of iron within our bloodstream. So what amount of iron is too small for metal benders to bend? Or is 3 or 4 grams not enough, or is it spread out throughout the entire system that it's not fully traceable? Because I know in Legend of Korra, what is it? Lynn's sister was able to bend, that metallic poison out of Korra, but it wasn't in her bloodstream. I mean, well, it got into her bloodstream, but she was able to bend it out of her bloodstream. So, if you're able to bend iron within the body, did she know just to stay away from that whenever she took that out? Or like, it begs the question, how much metal do you need in order to bend, and is it dispersed enough through the bloodstream that it's almost not traceable enough to do so?
Okay, so here's my take on that, right?
Right.
I feel like bending the small amount of iron would be too far removed from earth bending to be able to do blood bending. So here's like, I guess, like my reasoning where like my brain went through the process, right? Because initially I said yes. Initially my brain was like, well, yeah, because earthbenders can bend iron because there's only trace amounts of earth and iron, but they can bend the iron. But then I realized that, like, so say like you go by the rule of halves, right? So like, you've got like earth that you have to have 100% to bend initially, right? And so then you find out that like you can bend something if it is half earth, right? And so then can you at that point bend something that's 1/4 earth, or are you only able to bend because it's half earth, right? That's the question. So the how much of the iron that is in your bloodstream, how much of that is earth is the question. Because yes, we call it metal bending, but it has its roots in earth bending, because not every earthbender can metal bend. Because as we've learned, Bolin had such a hard time. Like, he just couldn't do it. Like, that was just not in his abilities to be able to metal bend. And so we know that it is a very particular version of earth bending that can go into that, right? So it's like, maybe centuries down the line, as like metal bending becomes a thing, you may end up with people who are just metal benders. They don't bend anything but metal, right? Because that's the question. Like, does evolution work the same in like, Avatar verse as it does in like real life? Because like we know that there are things about humans that like are not the same, right? Like, we have wisdom teeth that we don't need, that we have to get removed, but we needed those when we were Neanderthals and needed them for eating and stuff. Like,
We're taking on an evolutionary take on this. I like it. It's not.
so that's the way my brain went, right? Because I initially said yes, like my brain was like, well, yeah, and then when I went back and traced it, it's yes, but,
Yeah.
right? So like, yes, but maybe like 20, 30, 40 centuries in the future, like in the future, when metal bending is like, it's not even centuries, but generations, right? Because like we know that like Toph was the first one to metal bend. No one could do it before. And then in Korra, we have a ton of people who are able to metal bend because they were able to tap into that power, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like evolution wise, if evolution does exist in the Avatarverse, that there would actually be a point where people can't bend earth, they can only bend metal, because that was what like their evolutionary train or changed into being like, hey, we need to be able to bend metal, this is a thing, so like now we're gonna be able to only do that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's kind of like evolution wise.
See, I think.
And so I say at that point is when you would be able to blood bend as a metal bender, because then there'd be enough in the bloodstream, just like there was enough like earth in the metal.
Yeah. see, it's a very good take on it. See, like my mind was just like just the basic question of could you, um, go away, go. It my mind was just a basic question of like could they, because there's this amount of traits. But then I love hearing other people's reaction, like yourself, where you just take it and run. And I'm like, whoa, this opened up a whole new can of worms. I'm like looking at the basic stuff. I'm like, and then you just like took it and ran. Like, whoa. So it was so it's neat to hear those kind of things. And so like if if any of you listening or watching have any thoughts, like, or anything, please, please, please let us know. Let us know your thoughts. I'm super curious to hear what everyone has to say. Like the different takes on it is pretty unique and it's exciting.
So one more thing to go on our bending, um, right? So the other question with bending is, does having parents of two different bending elements help you bend that in between element, right? So we know with elements there are in between elements, like lava. It is a fire and an earth, right? So
I know what you're going with this. What?
so
I didn't think of this. Oh my god, what?
so the question is, right, and like we kind of have an answer on this, right? We were never actually given the answer, but we know that Bolin has a hard time doing metal bending, right, but picks up lava bending with ease.
Like that.
Like literally has zero problem with lava bending, but like no other like earthbender is gonna be able to just let me just bend this like fucking like fire rock. Like I don't know how else to describe it. Like, right? But then like that begs the question of what other like in between elements we have, right? So there's mud, right? But we also know that like earthbender, well, actually we don't know about earthbenders. We know waterbenders can bend mud. But like earthbenders, right? Technically they can bend mud because we know that they can also bend sand,
Yeah.
you know? So like does having like that like parental like Bolin has a Fire Nation and a Earth Nation parent. Like, did that help him, or was it just like something he was gonna always be able to do?
Yeah, and we don't have like a lot of stuff to go on because they're the only two that we know of in basically the entire show that have two different parents from each bending style, whereas everybody else has parents from the same type of bending style.
Ooh. Also,
Ooh,
I propose as a in between element,
okay. I'm excited.
lightning between air and fire.
Yo!
Can an airbender technically redirect lightning, or like because like obviously we know that like the child of a firebender probably at some point can, because like it's kind of like within any firebender to be able to do that as long as you do it correctly, right? Like you can die if you don't do it correctly, but like we know like based on Iroh's teachings, like as long as you know how to do it, like you can do it, right? But like Azula lightning bends though, right? Like she just produces fucking lightning from her fingers because she's a psychopath. But like I think the
Silly, but
lightning.
okay.
Look. We're gonna get to this in a different episode. We're gonna get to this in a different episode. I call her a psychopath, but she is my favorite psychopath. Obviously, she is my favorite psychopath. Um, but she's like a fucking psychopath because like she's also the only one who can do it, right? Like her fire is blue because she is so angry that it is so hot that it is blue fire, because like that's how fire works. Like the hotter it is, like it turns blue or whatever.
Yeah.
But I propose that lightning is technically an in between element, right? Like I think that lava can be technically bent by fire and by earthbenders, but like it takes a special kind. Lightning we know can be produced by crazy psychopaths, firebenders, but like I think it's an in between element. Like I think that kind of like, right, because like
Okay.
what other thing is like an in between element that you can get?
Oh, well.
But yeah, so
That's a pretty
it's
good one. Like,
I have lots of theoretical questions that I don't have answers to, and I need them.
yeah. So also so let me throw like a like an out of left field wrench into this.
Oh
Okay,
God.
we're gonna kind of merge something into the Legend of the Avatar Last Airbender Legend of Korra stuff. So early on, we were talking about how firebenders could be like heat benders and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
say you take Roy Mustang from Full Metal Alchemist, who can literally like just boom. Now, granted, his glove is like an ignition core kind of thing, so it's like can you? I don't know. I don't know what's question, but
So
like it begs the question of like is like in between elements, like creating their own and stuff like that kind of thing. But I just thought it was funny. It's like one of those funny things. It's like, ooh, look, I can create fire, and Roy Mustang walks in and goes, yeah, me too. Bye. You know.
yeah, but like I mean, with Mustang, right? So like getting into like other animes and things like that, right? With Mustang, he's only able to do it A with the gloves, but B because he has like the transfiguration like circle on his gloves, right? Because that's how like the Fullmetal Alchemist world creates theirs, right? Like they don't just he can't just like walk around and be like fucking fire. Whereas like Zuko would walk in the fucking door and be like fire, bitch. You know what I mean? Like they'd have a competition, and Zuko would be able to do it while it's raining.
Oh yeah, you got a good point there. Okay, I just wanted to bring in the Roy Mustang fact because I thought it was funny.
No, that is actually really funny. But yeah, no, I think that Zuko would win that
Oh yeah, hands.
ego battle too.
Oh yeah, Zuko would win that hands down because Zuko's got his honor back. Like so, his honor is everything.
Was the honor ever gone? We'll get to that in a later episode.
It just came back full force when he had like nice flowing locks. Then
Yes, I mean, yeah. Look. Okay, like I love Azula. She's my favorite psychopath. I love Zuko because he's like my favorite he's my favorite little muffin.
it's a little muffin.
Like it just we'll get to it in a later episode why he like I consider him a little muffin, but he's like my favorite little muffin.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so I like again many more episodes to come with all of this. I think we had some like really interesting topics and some philosophical thoughts. So if any of you are watching or listening, please let us know. What do you think is another in between element? That was a good point. In between element. Just your thoughts on bending and how it works. So yeah,
I also believe that earthbenders should be able to bend plants, but that's just
you know
I feel like a very unpopular opinion.
I think it's a very unpopular opinion too. So
Like I think that plants are considered earth.
I mean,
But also, okay, like I know that we're like going way past like 30 minutes. I know we kind of want to try to keep these around 30 minutes cuz like then who's going to listen to us ramble for an hour?
we're approaching 45, so
Okay, so but right, here's my question. So you know how when a waterbender like this is why I think earthbenders should be able to bend plants. When a waterbender takes all of the like water out of a plant,
hmm
it basically will crumble, it'll get dry. We've all seen a dry leaf. It crumbles, it basically becomes part of like dirt.
it biodegrades
If
and becomes.
if an earthbender can bend that, right? The like you take a plant, right? So you say you take like a leaf that is dried, you just like crumble it up. It's literally like it's just like sand in your hands, right? It's like tiny little sediment pieces, right?
hmm
Can an earthbender bend that? And if they can, that means that they can probably should be able to bend the rest of the plant that's not water.
You're right because like it kind of goes back like it's almost like compost almost. Like you just throw a bunch of like dead crap in it and it I don't know turns into like
But I guess like
fertilizer.
okay, I'm gonna be my own devil's advocate because you're not my devil's advocate at this point.
No.
You agree with me, right? So okay, let me see. Do you agree with this, right?
Okay.
Does the earthbender bend that, right? The like the ground up like dead plant, right? Does the earthbender bend that, or does the earthbender have to wait until the like chemical reaction has happened that turns it into like compost and part of the earth?
I would say no. I don't would say no that they wouldn't have to wait because and going back to the compost thing is that some of the stuff still has like it's not completely dead stuff. It hasn't it's literally like trash and like you know not necessarily dead like dead leaves, but dead leaves that still have moisture to 'em. If you're talking the route of like you sucking all the moisture out of something and it just powders into dust, then by all means, right then and there, it's able to be earth fit, to be bent,
It's
with
considered like earth. It's
yeah,
at that point
yeah,
because it's dust.
yeah. So compost is still like a moisture. Everything hasn't broken down into a fertilizer yet, because ultimately compost just turns into fertilizer, which helps plants grow. So,
Right.
but no, to your point, is you suck all the water out and it turns into dust, you can bend it right then and there.
Okay. So here is second devil's advocate part, right? Is a regular earthbender able to bend that? Or does it fall into the special category like sand bending? Because sand is considered part of earth for earth bending. We have sand benders that exist, but Toph can't sand bend. It's a special niche
Yeah.
earth bending, right?
Are we just talking?
So does that like dust that comes from plants, does that fall into like a niche earth bending, or does a normal earth bender like bend that?
So part of me says it's just normal earth bending. Sand
Okay.
is like it's a different type of like sediment kind of thing, but also
Isn't sand technically like glass?
it's ground up. I think it's like a ground up glass on all technicality, but I think this opens up another little niche of like dead plant bending.
Okay, no, but I think that like live plants can be bent. Like, okay, but my brain just went to glass bending.
Oh my god, we're gonna be here all night.
Look, hear me out. If a bender can bend sand,
And glass is
glass is
is
just
melted compressed sand.
then like can an earthbender technically bend glass and just send shards of glass at people?
Well,
This has gone down a larger
no,
rabbit hole than I thought it was going
I
to.
just thought okay, so here's the thing. If waterbenders can turn water into ice, then they can bend the ice. I would assume that the same could be done with sand and glass.
Wait, so you're saying that technically sandbenders can create glass?
I I don't think so because you need the heat and the pressure in order to do it. You at least need the
So
heat
a
to melt
sandbender combined with
a
a
firebender,
firebender could create glass.
which
Because a firebender creates the heat and the sandbender can compress it because they control the element itself.
then I think then at which they could create glass that way. But I think if you just had like a piece
Only like only like earthbenders could technically bend the glass because it's created by heat, but it's not heat.
exactly because it goes into a sub thing of like waterbenders. If waterbenders can turn water into ice, then they can sit there and break chunks of ice off and then bend that at people. It,
Wait, can waterbenders just turn your blood into ice?
that, God, that's crazy.
Waterbenders are the most dangerous benders alive right
You worried about
now.
the firebender and the lightning and all the bullshit? No, it's the
Dude,
waterbenders.
waterbenders I think are literally like the most dangerous, right? Because like A, they can blood bend. B, they can just take your blood out of your fucking body. C, fucking they can heal you, right? Like they would be the best at interrogation, right? So hear me out, right? You bloodbend them, you injure them, you heal them,
Yeah.
you go back and forth. They would be so good
Yeah.
at interrogation. Oh god, that just got really, really dark. But also, waterbenders are the most terrifying.
Listen, Halloween is the next major holiday coming up, so we can get dark now. We're legally allowed.
We'll get really dark. We'll talk dark things for Halloween
We'll
episode.
figure out a Halloween episode with this stuff, man.
That'll be fun, actually.
I think we have gotten quite a
I think we should probably end this here before we go down way more holes, because I have a feeling that there are holes that we have yet to like
bit.
poke.
Exactly. I propose that we don't poke any more holes and we let the fans poke the holes for us. So if you would like to continue to poke holes in this and have us go down various rabbit holes, let us know down below in the comments if you're here on YouTube. If you're listening to on a podcast, uh, we do have an email. Cassidy, what's the email?
We're nerds deal with it at gmail.com.
Boom. You guys can email us, do whatever you like. Um, but yeah, that's whew,
This
was
yeah, this went this went way further than I think we thought it was gonna go. Because I know that we had like touched on like subjects without going deep into them to kind of figure out what we were gonna talk about, but like
we went to a whole nother realm there. That was fun.
that was actually really fun. This is probably like my favorite part of like my day or my week now is like getting to talk nerdy things here, just because like these are things that like I don't even think about until we start talking theoreticals
Mhm.
with each other, right? And like you and I have that with each other where like you'll start talking about something and then I'm like, well, maybe.
We just start bouncing.
Right. Like I think this is so nice. And like I think as we start to get more people listening, we'll start having more people asking these theoretical questions with us or to us, and we won't know and we'll have to figure out answers, or we'll figure out our answers, right? Cuz like we said earlier with like airbending, right? Like do you believe their benders are creating their element, or are they just bending it? I choose to believe they're creating it because that's stupid that firebenders are the only ones that can. But
Stand on top of the mountain and preach it.
this is gonna be the hill that I die on, okay? Like,
I have a hill that I'm gonna die on, but that is for another episode. So maybe not for
I
this
think
one.
we all have those hills.
Oh yeah,
Because I also think that, like, earthbenders being able to plant bend is a hill that I will 100% die on.
I'll stand on that one too. So,
So,
but anyway, all right. So before we have this drag on any further, I think that might be it for this episode. What do you think?
yeah, I think we're good. I think if we were to continue, we probably would be here for another couple hours.
We would. So, but but yeah. So we touched on really good points. We'll probably continue with Avatar the Last Airbender and Legend of Korra on the next episode and a few episodes to come, and then we'll get into our convention series, and then of course like other animes and movies and stuff. I know Young Justice is a fairly hot topic still too, so girl, you gotta watch it.
I refuse.
It's okay. It's not as bad. It's really nice. Anyways, so all right, guys, that's it. If you want to poke any more rabbit holes into all these theories that we've talked about, again, let us know in the comments down below here on YouTube. But or if you'd like to email us, you can email us at
We're nerds, deal with it at gmail.com.
boom right there. So I so that's it, guys. Until the next episode, I'm Miranda,
And I'm Cassidy. And we're nerds,
and
and you got to deal with it.
bye, guys.
This is going to be so hard.
We'll see where the streaming service.
We forgot to say like and subscribe.
What?
You know, like the YouTube thing. Like, you
What?
know, like the hit the like button and the subscribe, or no,
Well, what are we gonna
like
do
button
now?
and the
What are we gonna
subscribe
do now, Cassie? The episode's already over. What are we gonna do, huh?
I don't
What are we
know.
gonna
Like
do?
just like I don't.
How did you
We're
forget to
bad
tell them to like and
YouTubers.
subscribe? How?
Look. I'm not the one with the initial YouTube channel. That was you. Okay? Like I'm bad at YouTube. I'm bad at being a public personality.
It's fine. We'll figure it out. Figure it out.